Hey, so I have pulled up a 500 tick chart because that's what you said you like to use. And I'm going to go over here just really quick how I do my basic pivots. Now, my higher time frame pivots are generally primary LVNs from a larger time frame volume profile, which I have marked here. But I'm going to take these off for right now because I want to show how I find pivots on really any time frame, but a lot of times I'm using this intraday to help facilitate my larger time frame trades. So, a few little things that I look for when I'm looking for a pivot. I'm looking where price was once resistance and then it's support. So, resistance turns to support or support turns to resistance. Now, when I first started doing pivots, I was like, oh my gosh, but that's all over the place because, like, here's support and here it's resistance, but then it's traded through it. What do I do with that? So I'm really looking for the edges, right? The outer bounds of a balance zone. And so here price has been, rotating back and forth. So I'm looking at, okay, where has price been support like a bunch of times recently, where maybe it was resistance earlier, but it's been finding a lot of support. And where is it resistance that it really hasn't found support at yet? And then at those spots, I'm going to just mark a zone. Okay, so I've got resistance. I'll show you what I'm looking at. So resistance, resistance, support, support, support. And I'm going to go up to like most of the candle bodies or so I can capture all of that price action there right here. And then I'm going to extend this. Okay, and then I have resistance here. Resistance, finds support, finds a little bit of support, but like barely, and coming back down through it, and then support here. Okay, so I'm gonna put this, this is not perfect, right? Because really what I'm also doing is when price comes back down to this area, excuse me, I want to see what its reaction is. Is it going to initiate up through a resistance zone and just fall right back in? Or is it going to initiate up through a resistance zone? Some absorption happens. Then it comes back down to that area, finds support, and looks exhaustive to the downside. So it finds support and then goes back up. Because the key is, I don't really want to be trying to go long, for instance, when price goes up through a zone and some absorption happens, because then look what can happen. It can come right back down. What I want to see is like over here where we have resistance, it comes up, finds support, and then continues up again. Because how many times have you been in a trade where you just jump in, right? You jump in around here because now your emotions are getting going because price is moving quickly, and then it hits some absorption, and then you get stopped out. And then it holds support right where your emotions started to say, oh my gosh, this is going to go up and I'm going to miss it, right? So it's just one of those things where practicing patience is key. Okay, so I've got these two zones now. We'll extend them. And then we have another little one up here. These are kind of close together, but we're just going to keep an eye on them. All right, so those are my three main zones. Okay, and then I'm going to speed up price action here. Okay, so now we're coming down, and we've even started to reject. So see, price never initiated out of this zone. It came back down to this zone, rejects it here. Let me zoom in for you. So we're rejecting it here, we're rejecting it here. So this is where I'd be, if I couldn't get an opportunity to enter here, this is where I did enter very early in Globex today, around this area to enter short. Okay, and I'm also looking for when price does continue down, where were the other times? Now we're getting like on the smaller time frame kind of thing, right? To see if we're going to have continuation. Where were the other times that price had found support? So I've got a little zone here because I've found support, 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 like that. Okay, but I know too that this is more like an inner term one. I really want to be initiating a trade from here, right? Or it go up, come down, meet it, be exhaustive to the downside because it's reversing to go to the upside. Okay, now we're coming down to our next pivot. All right, we've come up through it, but we just flew down through it, had a nice little wick here and came back up. I'm not seeing this as finding support at this pivot. What I'm seeing is exploration down to liquidity, which is probably coming from this area, testing this liquidity down here. So I'm going to keep watching it. I'm going to stay in my short and keep watching it. All right, I'm coming back down. And I know too, because of my session volume profile, see how nice and rounded or Gaussian of a curve this volume profile is, that in the middle of it where there's the most volume, I can see price rotate just like it is right here in this high volume area. And so I'm aware of that. I'm not emotionally bothered by that if I'm in a short because I understand the mechanics of it. And I'll add the little caveat that are mechanics going to be the end all be all, or auction market theory, or whatever you want to call it? Of course not. The market can do whatever it wants, right? But I know that I have probability on my side that price is going to keep rotating in that zone until it loses another pivot. So like it did here, so we came up, we tested this pivot, okay? Exhaustion, came back down, tested it with the lower high, came back down, lost this pivot, and we're wicking away from this one now. All right, so we're about half hour into the session, into RTH. Zoom this out so you can see the other pivots here. Right? And look where price bounced right here, right where we had started our pivot, where we had resistance earlier. And it comes up through it. Let me slow this down so I can talk it out. So if I zoom in here, found support, right? Comes up, can't make it up through the pivot, immediately comes right back down, does not continue to have a supportive looking nature of the price action, comes back down underneath the pivot. So we either are going to stay in our short or possibly, if we get a retest, have an opportunity to re-enter. Okay, and I'm going to go down here. I'm going to see if I have any other areas of support because, you know, maybe I'm thinking, oh, wow, I didn't expect price to go down this far today. So we'll make sure we put this pivot in. There you go. Maybe we draw like a little trend line here. And really what I'm using trend lines for is to continue to observe momentum. Okay, and this is where I need another pivot. So we're gonna go right here, and you see how this does not have to be incredibly painfully exact. Because what you have to make sure you're doing is observing what the price action looks like. What is the behavior of the price action? Does it look exhaustive? Does it look like absorption? Does it look like continuation? And then we got more continuation. So And you can see that that last pivot is kind of far away. And this is why I also wanted to show this day, because sometimes you're like, okay, how can I go back that quick? Or I didn't go, or I don't, or we're at the highs. Let's say it's opposite. We're at the highs and I don't have any information from here. So if you don't have a level here, if you don't have another way of getting a level like I do with my volume profiles, then this is where you want to be trailing your stop of your short, or you just wait for things to set up. What you can tell right now is if I zoom in here, I'm going to slow this down just a little bit. You know, I do have an area of support here, right? That's not like the strongest spot on earth because it was just so brief and for such little volume, but it's a spot, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to watch it the next time price comes down back to it, if it does, and observe the behavior of the price action. Okay, draw ourselves a little trend line here. Okay, we're starting to look kind of exhaustive here. I got a trend line break and I'm starting to get some nice wicks here, but then we're coming back up. We got these wicks, but we didn't travel back down below those wicks. So we're going to keep watching. Because like I said, I want an exhaustive look away from this pivot. And that's why we keep watching. All right, and here, now that we've traveled through this pivot so much, I'm also going to look right above it because here I've got resistance, right, and some support. Make sure I draw this in case I need it. And at this point, I see that one, I have a lot of volume built here. And two, look what I'm getting. I'm getting resistance, 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 resistance at real close levels. And so I can actually, now that this area has had volume built in it and traded through, or pushed up and then built volume, I'm going to erase this and I am going to mark a new pivot because I have all this resistance that has not been able to become support. Because you can see here as price comes up through it, comes down to meet it again and just falls right through and finds resistance, resistance, resistance. So to me, that's a stronger pivot. So this is one of those things where if I'm trading a smaller time frame setup, scalp kind of an idea, not my higher time frame primary LVN from a large volume profile, this is how I'm finding those pivots as they present themselves as well. So I'm looking for where has price been hitting resistance that it has not been able to find support, where has price found support where it was not able to travel underneath and it then become resistance. And you can see we're getting some real nice volume building here. there's our support. See how nice that works? That's a nice little scalp. Okay, and we're going to move this over here and we'll get going on the rest of the day because I believe price then kind of just consolidated. So I'm going to speed this up just a little bit so we don't sit here and watch more price action than we need to. But you can see how it does give you those edges of the balance zones that you can either, you can use volume profiles or you can use pivots. One, I think, really big benefit to using pivots for me intraday, in addition to my volume profiles, the way I'm showing you, is because I can introduce a somewhat new pivot, like I was showing you here, where this volume profile has been for the whole session, right? But I'm getting the information of the current edges for the current order flow by putting in that new pivot when we saw resistance, 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 just form like this and kind of form a new spot. And so I put in a new pivot, and I know that is the most recent order flow behavior. Okay, we got about 2 more hours in the trading day. We're almost done here. Looks like price found support there again. And so now that price is just kind of trading through this middle pivot here, I don't really want to use that as an entry like I was talking about before when price started to trade through that one here. So I'm just going to erase this, and I'm going to keep these that I have here. All right, we travel back up to it again. Looks like we're finding some resistance there. And we get another downside trade. Some questions I get, like, okay, well, how do you enter these? And of course, that's where my trend lines in 1, 2, 3, 2B, entry strategy comes in. I won't go over that here, but it's basically what I'm doing here when I'm watching this price action is that I know that it's at the point of control of the session profile. So there's gonna be some absorption here. There's gonna be some rotation. This small little volume node. I need to be patient. I need to get an entry at an edge where I have good risk management or risk tolerance to my stop. So I would want to have an exhaustive looking wick like here, like these, to be finding an entry if I wanted to go short, because I've been seeing that, price has been rotating in this balance zone here, and I think maybe it's going to rotate again. Got about 30 more minutes left on this trading day here. 20, 10 more minutes. And there we go. There's the completion of our trading day. So if I take these away, since this isn't our complete focus, and I zoom out here to the whole session, right? When I'm using pivots that price has been, that are new pivots like I was talking about, that price hasn't been trading around like this in the middle of, you can see how good of trades this will give you when you are taking these trades based on exhaustive looks. Exhaustive look. This, I would have not been so sure of myself, except for maybe a little bit with these wicks. You could take that, absolutely, right? But then look at this catch, exhaustive look. Exhaustive look, you get stopped out, here's your exhaustive look. Exhaustive look to the upside, right? And then you make this pivot somewhere around here. And usually, I mean, I was speeding up price action so much, I'm not doing so much adjusting, but I'm gonna, you know, if I get this wick and then this, I'm gonna adjust it up. So there's my exhaustive look. If in doubt, a really good exhaustive look here. You know, that's gonna get you from like 600 all the way down to 520. Who can complain about that? Higher low, that looks like a nice little 1, 2, 3 setup. Exhaustive look to the downside. So lots of trades that this can afford you.